Sometimes I think we need a new definition of the word terrorist. Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect Podcast. I'm your host, David, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about terrorism. And the reason why I'm going to talk about terrorism is because I think sometimes we look at the word terrorism and we automatically think of some jihadi wearing all black, hijacking a plane, flying it into a building, or wearing a suicide belt and, blowing himself up in a crowded arena. But that's only part of it. So what is terrorism? Well, I think culturally we've kind of come to accept the idea that terrorism is just that action, the mass murder. But is it really? When you actually look at the word terror, what is the whole point of terrorism, right? Well, the whole point of terrorism is to instill terror in the population. Now, formally, the way most terrorism would take place is, it would involve some sort of mass murder. And if you do that mass murder often enough, it instills terror in the population. And so that's traditionally the way it works. But are there other ways to create terror? Are there other ways to instill terror in the population? And I would argue the case that yes, actually there is. And one of the worst culprits of this is the corporate media. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Dave, wait a second. Are you saying that the corporate media are terrorists? Well, sort of. Sort of. But yes, essentially. I'm saying that the corporate media, so like your Fox News, your ABC, your CNN, your MSNBC, your New York Times, all these big, huge corporations that they have as their business model to provide news, right? In exchange for getting people to look at their newspaper or their cable channel or their news broadcast or whatever format that they're publishing on. The whole idea is their business model is to get advertising dollars because they're getting eyes onto the screen so that they can tell advertisers, hey, if you pay us, we can promise you that we're going to get you this X number of people looking at your product, and we're going to do it because we've got this big, huge audience. So obviously the biggest one is Fox News. They've got the largest audience out of the corporate media, and that's why I mentioned them first, not because they're necessarily the worst, although I've never really been a big fan of Fox News, even though supposedly Fox News is supposed to align more closely with me because they tend to align conservative, but yeah. I'll tell you one of the reasons why I don't like Fox News. I remember it was probably 2004, 2005, I can't remember, but it was a good, it was a good long time ago. I was watching Fox News and they were talking about some kind of, I think it was a Hardee's ad or a Carl's Jr. ad, and they were talking about how it was pornographic. And they were, clutching their pearls, like, oh, can you believe the pornographic ad that, and then they keep showing the ad in the background while they're talking about how bad it is that it's kind of pornographic. And I'm thinking, okay, so what you're basically saying is, this is bad, and that people will look because it's kind of like a dog to its vomit, or kind of like the rubbernecking people at an accident. You know, you're going along on the freeway. You've got an accident. You're coming up on it, and you know you should just keep going because that will keep the traffic moving. But you have to look. Oh, you have to look, because we, as humans, we kind of have this, oh, I just have to see this gross thing, right? In fact, I was just meeting with a friend, and he was just like, oh yeah, I just got my surgery, and, he's like, you want to see the scar? And I'm thinking, do I? Okay, kind of I do, because that is kind of eerily gross. And, we, as humans, that's what we do, right? We want to look to see what's gross and see it. Not that it brings us pleasure, but we have this weird desire to look into the abyss. And I think that's what the psychology that they were using on Fox News was, to show this thing that's supposed to be terrible because it's bad for society, right? That's what the conservatives typically believe, is that having too much pornography is bad for society for whatever reason. We can discuss that on a separate issue, but the point is that it is viewed as an evil, right? So let's show you the evil, which, one, will get the people who like looking at the evil, but two, you'll get all the pearl clutchers who are like, oh, I can't believe this. It was all just a big show. There was nothing real. There was no news. This was just clickbait. It was clickbait before clickbait was really an understood concept. So, for example, this morning, there was a news article that flashed on my Apple News feed, and I don't necessarily use Apple News all that much, but I've got an iPhone, and as a result, see the little headlines pop up, and one of them was talking about, oh, the dark reasons behind the happiest country in the world. Wait, what? And so you read into it, and it's like talking about how Finland is rated as the happiest country in the world, but there's a dark reason behind it. That's all the headline said. Now, being that I understand the headlines, I understand how to read the news, I instantly had my spidey senses tingling, little reference to Spider-Man there, but my senses were tingling, and I could tell, yeah, this is clickbait. If I look into this, there's going to be something really banal, just very uninteresting, but man, they're going to get me to click on this, and that will increase their viewership so that they can sell the ads. Because that's how you do it. You write a headline so that people will go, ooh, click, click, click. It's clickbait, right? Well, what's the best way to do that? Well, the most common way for newspapers throughout history, ever since newspapers were first founded, the sensational always sells better. And what is sensational? Well, typically sensational is what grabs your attention, and usually that's going to be dark stuff, bad news, right? Stuff that will make you get all scared. Why? Because if it's good news, you're just going to be like, oh, good. My life's good. Yay. My life's good. Yay. Well, so you can see, if you're a business trying to present the news, then you've got to have something bad in the news all the time. So as a result, we end up with corporate terrorists. Yes, I'm saying it. The corporate media, they are terrorists. Their whole job is to keep us into a constant state of terror, a constant state of, oh my goodness, the sky's falling, so that we'll keep looking, we'll keep watching the news, we'll keep looking at their channel so that they can increase their ad rates. And it's really quite that simple. So what's the solution? I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, because in some countries, they, like for example, England, they fund the BBC with their tax dollars. Same thing in Canada, they've got the CBC and they fund it with tax dollars. And why do they do that? Well, the logic is that corporate media tends to veer towards sensationalism and, instilling terror in the public so that the public will keep viewing the news, right? But that's really scary, because then you've got a propaganda arm of the government. The BBC, they're pretty good, but they're still technically part of the government of England, which means that technically it is propaganda, because they're going to say what the government wants to be said. And what if the government is not being honest and equitable? Oh, but Dave, that never happened. The English government, they're good. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. Just like Canada's government is being so good to its people by locking them up. Despite COVID numbers dropping to the lowest levels they've been since the pandemic started, they've increased the lockdown. And is there any investigations of the politicians who are pushing this? No, because the CBC knows from which hand they are fed. Right? So I don't think government-supported media is the solution, but I also recognize the huge major failings of the corporate media. So I don't know what the solution is. And I would love if anybody does have ideas. If you watch this video, and I know you do, because you've made it this far, all 3 of you, or however many people watch this. Sometimes I get 3 views, sometimes I get 50. Yeah. Why am I doing this again? Oh yeah, that's right. Because it makes it so that I can get these ideas out. I can vent my frustrations, and also so that my posterity can see how I thought and what I was doing. So, back to the idea. What's the solution for news? How do we solve the problem of sensationalism in the corporate media and propagandism with government-supported media? Those seem to be the only 2 solutions that are currently available, other than maybe citizen journalists. But citizen journalists, there's the problem of there's obviously a lot of flaws in the way that a lot of people report. It's hearsay, so you're never quite sure if it's completely accurate. So ideally, we would have a system by which we could have authoritative sources that we can trust, right? That are neutral arbiters, and they're not just trying to, publish crap. That would be the ideal, right? But at the same time, we know very well that these so-called authoritative sources have utterly, abdicated their responsibility, their fiduciary responsibility as citizens, as arbiters. They've completely thrown that out, and they've become 100% politicized, sensationalized, corporatized, to the point where you can't trust them. So what is the solution? I don't know. I'd love to hear your comments. Put them down. Let's see. Let's see those comments. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Love your family. And I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.